Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, new Rivians lifted Defenders, Discovery's missing some parts, and then we celebrate Jenna and Liza's all-new Rebel Rally documentary series. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I am the spring-loaded metal step to Steven's comfort height mode. I am the rattly ankle-biting pants grabber of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, in the news this week, some non-Land Rover related news, but certainly some interesting 4x4 vehicle news. Our good friends at the Rivian Motor Company have just released 3, no less, brand new vehicles. They actually did kind of an interesting, almost Apple-like wait, but there's one more special model. But let's start in numerical order. A new sort of, I guess, value priced, let's say, SUV. They've dropped the T's and the S's and the W's, and this one is just going to be called the R2. So the predecessor to what we now call the R1S, the SUV version. I don't know if it means like they're just not making pickup trucks anymore. I know that segment has not done very well. It feels like the Ford Lightning isn't selling as well as Ford wanted it to. Dodge has pushed their electric truck out a couple more years now. So has Chevrolet. So maybe Rivian isn't planning on revving the R1T for a little bit. But anyways, the R2, which is the successor to the R1S. What do you think? What do you think of it? You like it?
Well, I watched the reveal live. I did.
The Rivian reveal.
A friend of mine who is a diehard Land Rover owner up there in the great state of Montana works at Rivian.
That's right.
He reminded me that they were doing the reveal yesterday, and so I watched it. It was pretty cool. I think this is great. I think that, there needs to be a moderately priced electric SUV option that's from a quality manufacturer. If you've ridden in a Rivian, they're pretty nice vehicles.
Yeah, they are nice. They are. I agree. Yeah, they're real nice. This is very affordable. I'm in the Adventure Edition, which I think is sort of the entry-level package. They're saying is going to be $45,000. I imagine that's sort of the base price. There'll be options and things on top of that, but that is very aggressively priced for an all-electric SUV. For an SUV of any kind, honestly, a RAV4 these days is around $45,000. So
a RAV4, the new RAV4, I don't know if you've seen it though, is larger than a Suburban.
I know,
it's huge.
Insane. I know it's
huge.
Crazy.
I couldn't believe it when I saw one. I couldn't believe it. I remember the original RAV4s coming out. I'm that old, and they were very small vehicles, Super
small.
especially the two-door, like super small, like Suzuki Samurai size vehicles.
Yeah.
And they'd look like a little roller skate, those things.
Yep.
And so to see the new RAV4, it's massive. It's so big.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of
like the RAV8. It's huge.
Yeah, it's way too big. Yeah. And then there's an all-terrain version. I'm not sure what makes it different because I haven't really read through all the thing, but that'll be $50,000. And then a launch edition, which they always do, is going to be sort of a fancied up, probably a well-optioned version for $55K, which is really pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty nice lineup considering, F-150, for instance, which I admittedly is a pickup truck. I mean, for the high-end edition of that's $120,000 pickup truck. And, like the Hummer EV or something like that, that's $200,000 and some odd $1,000. Like, you can't really point to another EV, even a Rivian EV is, the next closest one, I think, is about $100,000, just shy of that for the R1S.
They're really, focusing on some mass adoption. They're trying to get their sales numbers up, to increase investment. And so I'm sure they're selling these vehicles at a pretty significant loss. And I think it represents a good value for consumers and a good opportunity for them to get an EV if that's something that they're interested in doing. The truck segment seems a little bit more intractable in terms of, getting away from ICE engines, but I think there's probably a lot more adopters in the SUV segment, especially the compact semi-luxury SUV segment. I'm sure that is probably going to be more effective for them in terms of being able to reach those consumers and sell those vehicles. So I'm hopeful that they do well. There needs to be some nice, moderately priced cars.
Yeah. And this has, what is kind of considered, I think, the standard now for EV battery range. This will do 300 miles on a battery charge.
That's pretty significant.
It's stupid fast in a straight line. 0 to 60 is like 3 seconds, and all it does, it has all the stupid EV tricks that any EV has and stuff. But 300 miles, so that means its DC fast charging is probably right around about a half an hour to do a DC fast charge to 80%, which is about what that 300 mile range takes.
20 to 80 is half an hour. Yep.
Yeah. So that's pretty standard now for all vehicles that have that size battery in them. And so that's a really good deal, considering the next vehicle up from that is nearly double that price. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I think so. I think it's worth noting, and certainly Land Rover is trying to break into the EV segment, and the further they push that out, the harder it's going to be to compete with these types of vehicles at $45,000. How do you make a vehicle that's nicer than that with more capability in that price range?
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very difficult.
And they didn't just announce the R2, but also a new sort of segment of vehicle. I wouldn't really call it an SUV necessarily, the R3. And the R3, that won't come out for a couple of years. That's still a ways off. It's going to be kind of a little cheaper on one side and then a little more expensive on the other side. And we'll get to the R3X in a second, but it's sort of more like I don't know. It's almost looks like a station wagon meets an SUV is maybe the best way.
I'll tell you what it looks like.
Right?
I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like a Lada Niva.
It looks like a Lada Niva. It absolutely looks like a Lada Niva.
It looks like the little
exactly
Russian car. It's great.
Exactly.
Fiat Panda. A Fiat Panda-esque.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a new segment. These vehicles have existed and they're just unusual. It's an unusual thing. And I like it. I like it.
Oh, I like it.
It's got sort of a Volkswagen, Rabbit sort of look to it, the profile.
Yeah. It does, yeah.
It's got bigger, chunkier wheels, and I think it's great.
Yeah, it's hatchbacked, which is cool. And then, of course, they're doing an R3X, which really is geared to be a rally car. It's higher ground clearance. It has, wider stance. It runs wider tires. The wheel arches are wider. It has a different off-road tuning system. The four-wheel drive system is different in it. It has some, other, aero stuff to make it a little more off-road capable. And apparently there's going to be some additional features where you can plug in rally lights and stuff easier into it. So it's really geared towards off-road, but it's essentially geared towards the Rebel Rally, which is something that Rivian won last year, and they've been participating in pretty much the entire time there's been an electric category in that event. So it's interesting. They've built a car specifically for that event. But yeah, it's really cool. And again, these cars, with the R3 sort of being placed market-wise just under the R2. So it's going to be essentially a little bit cheaper, coming in between 35 and 40K. And then the R3X coming in sort of at the top end of what the R2 is, between 45 and 55. K, again, depending on what options you put on it and all that kind of stuff. It's going to have a little roof rack option. It's going to have some of that sort of stuff so that you can, it's sort of meant for camping, for backcountry stuff. If you're a backcountry climber, if you go skiing, if you do that sort of stuff, I think the R3X is meant for, a couple that has maybe a dog.
I'm going to say this is the electric Subaru. I'm going to go out on the limb.
100%.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's the market segment
100%.
That they're gearing this towards.
100%.
And I'm sure that has come up in their discussions. It definitely targets that sort of fence sitter of a
Yep.
consumer, if you will. They're not really wanting to be in the SUV segment, but they want something a little bit more capable than a sedan. And they live in the Pacific Northwest, and
Yep.
maybe they're a little liberal. But, there's definitely a lot of headwinds in the electric vehicle market right now. A lot of manufacturers are pushing out, canceling programs, doing a little bit of, hey, maybe we rush this a little bit.
Yep.
So, and it's not just electric vehicles, it's like alternative fuel vehicles in general.
Yep.
I don't know if you heard, but Shell is like closing their hydrogen network in California.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant if you've purchased
a hydrogen
powered car.
Yep.
You could definitely get to the place where your hydrogen powered car could not get to the nearest fueling station.
What's Will Ferrell going to do with his 7 Series? We don't know. It's not, we don't know.
It's definitely unfortunate. Hydrogen has a lot of potential, but obviously there's a huge cost in infrastructure, and Shell's like, nah, we're not gonna do that.
No.
And Toyota banked pretty heavily on hydrogen powered, alternative fuel vehicles. I think their plan was to, sort of push that as opposed to pure electrics. They have, I think, one pure electric. Toyota does.
That's right.
You would think a company that big would hedge their bets a little bit and release a few, maybe.
Yep.
But they're definitely kind of in a weird spot where they don't have a lot of alternative fuel vehicles. They have some hybrids, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The Prius is, sort of was almost a trendsetter. The first
that's right.
Vehicle with broad adoption was the Prius, I think.
A hybrid powertrain. Yep. And
Hybrid
that's actually,
powertrain?
that's, now the newest 130 with the hybrid 48 volt supercharger. The only thing that 48 volt system does is spin up the supercharger at idle, so that the engine essentially is using the supercharger, the electric supercharger, at idle. And that's the only thing that it really uses it for. And so you get extraordinary fuel economy because it's using this electric supercharger. So it's an interesting world that we've kind of pivoted back now to these just way more efficient battery hybrid systems. Much like, Formula One, like about, 10 years ago had the KERS system where they were using these essentially electric boosted turbo and superchargers. That seems to be the sort of new thinking now is, we can get these engine assist from a transmission, right? From just, when you're coming off the line, just use the transmission to push the car until it comes up to a reasonable speed, then kick the gas engine on. And that seems to be what a lot of manufacturers are doing now that, ZF has this electric assist transmission that a lot of manufacturers are integrating. That's what Ford's doing with their hybrid F-150s, and they're selling a lot more of those than they are of the Lightning. And it's it's an interesting time where, it does seem like manufacturers are sort of, second guessing themselves on the full electric.
It's hard to blame them when consumers are not adopting them. So to see, company like Rivian trying to bring in more mass adoption, I appreciate that.
Yep.
It's we'll see if it pays off.
Hopefully it does. Speaking of risky, I don't know if you've seen the latest in what I like to call ridiculous Defender modifications. Last week, of course, we had the 650 horsepower modified classic Land Rover Defender pickup, which is always a good time. That's just good, clean fun. Great way to kill yourself. This week we have a new Defender. This one modified with a 9-inch lift kit. And this lift kit was applied by what I believe is a company called SoFlo Customs.
SoFlo, bro.
Yeah. SoFlo, bro.
If you look at this Defender 110, I believe it is a 110. It is my favorite color of 110. It has the blue.
Yeah, I like it.
It's quite pleasant.
Yeah.
And it looks like they've put it on a modified RC car chassis.
That's exactly right.
It doesn't quite fit. It's got a lot of lift, and the tires are not overly larger than stock. They're quite a bit wider.
Right.
So it really does make it look like an RC car. They've made a very substantial 3, possibly 4 foot tall air dam to
Sure.
bridge that gap between the bumper and the suspension components.
That's right.
And it really does give it that sort of RC car look.
It totally does. It looks as though this is a Defender body that has just been put on the chassis of something else. It is, and I don't say this very often, and I don't say it without an ounce of caution, but these tires are too small for this car.
Given the amount of lift that it has, they look
looks
disproportional.
Weird. It looks weird. Yeah, it looks
really does.
weird. And if you look at the car from the front, it doesn't appear as though you've gained any actual ground clearance. It just looks radically out of proportion now. So
it's big. I can't imagine it drives very wonderfully. They've trimmed the wheel arches to accommodate for the wide tires turning, and it'd be interesting to see how that thing drives. But it's super tall. It's super tall.
Yeah.
If you're going across Idaho and you encounter some crosswinds, it might just tip over.
It's just going to flip over.
Just tip over.
Yeah. I noticed they have the side deployable ladder on the up to the roof, which looks like a Smitty built generic roof rack for a Tahoe that they've just sort of bolted to the roof, as it is the most ill-fitting roof rack I've ever seen. I feel like that side deployable ladder needs to go on the driver's side door so that you can actually get into the vehicle. You just crawl in through the window.
On the sill?
Yeah, just on the door sill and just have it deploy
I think
downwards.
It's now reminiscent of a fire escape where it has
it looks very fire escapey, yeah.
And an extension that drops down to the ground so you can get off the roof. Should it catch fire?
Should it catch fire, yeah. Especially, I think the back is the thing that looks the most like an RC car, because it really, everything is lifted up so high, and the back tire looks so out of place on the back door that it looks very RC car-y. It's an interesting one. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes. So do go and take a look at it, because it's real silly. It's a real silly looking car. And again, another great way to die in a modified Land Rover. So if you're looking to end it all in an interesting way, there you go.
It is definitely not a pedestrian friendly vehicle. If that matters to you, but certainly there is a push towards having more pedestrian friendly vehicles. There've been some recent statistics that say, for every inch in height, a certain percentage of pedestrians are more likely to be seriously injured or killed by vehicles, and it reduces the forward vision. You can't see anything in front of the car because it's so tall. And in certain circumstances, I can see the utility of having that height if it's used for more clearance, like you said. But in this case, it just seems like a real poser mobile.
Yeah, it does. And I wonder at some point, though, is there a breakover for that it's tall enough that it's safer for pedestrians because they'll safely clear underneath the vehicle?
Just pass right underneath
right underneath, like they'll be knocked to the ground, but then they'll safely pass underneath.
Well, I think this one boasts something like 13 inches of ground clearance or something like that. So if you're 13 inches tall, this may be safe.
I think that's dead in the middle, though. As soon as you get towards either control arm, it's right back to stock height. So I think it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyways.
Well, if you'd like one of these, go check out the fine folks over at SoFlo.com.
Speaking of dying in a Land Rover related accident, as it turns out, the Discovery Sport is being recalled for some loose bolts in the A-pillar of the car.
Uh-oh.
Yep, that's not so great.
It sounds like Boeing might have assembled that.
That is, Land Rover's recently outsourced the assembly of the Discovery Sport to Boeing. And they just left some bolts out, I guess. Apparently, it's another bolt torquing issue. They've had some recent bolt torquing issues, and yet another
door plug came off in flight, of thing.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Well, this apparently affects all of the Discovery Sports that were sold last quarter. I believe 50 vehicles are being recalled.
Yeah, that's right. All 50 vehicles. Every owner has been visited in person, and those bolts have been tightened. So,
that was harsh.
Discovery Sport, not that popular of a vehicle, but it has been recalled. But this recall affects no one at all. So, not a problem. They just tightened the bolts of those vehicles sitting on dealer lots. And it was no problem. It's rough. Yeah, it was rough.
That
It was
is
rough.
that is rough. It looks like you can get a pretty good deal on Discovery Sports. I'm looking at them online.
Discovery Sports is the Freelander 3, right? So like there's still some Freelander DNA in there. So, if you do want,
Versatile compact SUV.
yeah, if
Starting
you want,
at $48,900.
ooh, it's just a little
For a
bit
brand new
more
one.
expensive than a Rivian R2.
It's pretty reasonable.
Not
to
quite
be
ready
honest.
for a Rivian R2. You can get yourself into a Discovery Sport, and then we'll put up on the Underpowered Hour some Freelander 3 badging, and you can switch that over to.
They do
Freelander
kind of
3.
look like a Freelander, don't they?
Well, they are.
Are they
They really
they're
are.
they're the successor to the Freelander?
Yeah,
Is that
because
what I'm hearing?
LR2 in the US was Freelander 2 in the UK, and it would have been Freelander 3 if they didn't sort of rebrand that as Discovery. So to me, that's the Freelander 3. We know the truth.
Well, you are a Freelander enthusiast, so
That's
I
true.
will
Yeah.
I will accept that.
We know the truth. It's a Freelander under there. It's a Freelander under there. And finally, in non-Land Rover related news, if you are interested, speaking of Freelanders, in the ultimate in alternative SUV, over on the old Bring a Trailer, one of my favorite cars, and I know you're familiar with this, Ike, because it is the dumbest vehicle.
Is it a Furvis Ranger?
No, God, I wish it was.
Damn it.
I want a Furvis Ranger real bad. Real bad. Oh, and I'm going to mention there's another car I'll mention to you afterwards. But there's a 2021 Quadro Sherp Pro XT. Ooh, if you haven't
Are
seen
those
a
free
Sherp,
legal?
I think it depends on the state. I don't think in
Mm.
California they are for sure because of the engine. But the Sherp is what I can only describe as a barrel with windows and monster truck tires. It was a 4-passenger skid steer vehicle that looks like a garden shed that someone put windows on, painted matte black, and put giant paddle tires on. And they are a hoot to drive. They are actually.
Have you driven one?
I've only been in one. I've actually never gotten to drive it. We were at a ranch where someone, like for an event, and they were shuttling people out to the event in one of these dumb things for like a movie premiere thing. And no, they wouldn't let me drive it. But I've been in one, and it was kind of fun. It was like a dumb promotional thing that they got a couple of these out. So I've been in them.
They were just like they were using it like a go-kart.
It was like a go-kart, and they're slower than you think, but they're neat.
I picture them being extremely slow. Like the tires are taller than the.
Yeah, they're
than
slow,
the cab.
and actually they get stuck pretty easy, coincidentally. And if you get a tire, like if the tire comes off the bead or something, you might as well just leave them there because like changing a tire, you need like 2 forklifts and a crane. They're pretty neat. They're pretty neat. They're like if a G.I. Joe villain vehicle was real, it would be this thing. It's the most.
It has tires that are so large that the thing floats.
That's right.
If I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And there's a lot of videos of these things like driving on ice and then falling into the water and then climbing back out of the ice. And
that's right.
There's not too many vehicles that would do that.
Nope, there are not.
They're
Nope.
kind of a weird combination of lightweight with big flotation tires.
They use a paddle tread on the tire that I'm sure would just paddle through the water. I think you could drive it into the water and paddle around. I don't think it would go very fast, but yeah, you can paddle around. It's awesome.
It doesn't go very fast on land either, but I guess you can
nowhere,
go.
No. And I mean, the controls are literally, it's a straight skid steer. So it just has 2 levers. That's all you need. Drives like a Bobcat, 100% skid steer. So just brakes on, I believe, just the front wheels probably. And it just Bobcats around. That's all you need.
Is it hydrostatic? Is it?
I imagine it would be.
hydraulically
I
driven?
imagine it would be hydrostatic, right? It wouldn't be brakes, right? With something that tires that big, it'd have to be hydrostatic, right? Because those are awfully big tires to just be braking the axles. Maybe
They have a very flexible sidewall, though. They're like when you see them, the sidewall's
puffy
moving.
sidewalls.
Yeah, they're super flexy.
if you're gonna start your own like super villain terrorist organization and you need like some cool vehicles to fight G.I. Joe with, head on over to Bring a Trailer and buy yourself that Sherp Pro because it's only $10,000 right now. I mean, it's just been listed, but I think they're only $60,000 new or something, $60 or $70,000 new. So you can always buy a new one. But hey, get yourself a deal. Starting new evil organizations isn't cheap, so save money where you can.
If you're in the market for a $60,000 amphibious golf cart, maybe you could get a bargain. I feel like super wealthy people have a short attention span, so there's going to be more of these for sale soon.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I feel like this is something that you buy and you get tired of in a weekend. It is International Women's Day, and what better way to celebrate than with the release of a project that we've been working on here for, about 6 months. We worked hand in hand with our good friends at JLR to produce a documentary about Jenna and Liza, the Full Sail Dream Team, and their 2023 Rebel Rally adventure. So it's a 5-part documentary series. And you know what? You can go and check it out right now on JLR's website. So if you go to landroverusa.com/defender/women of defender, you'll find it there. And we'll, of course, link it on our social and you can check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. 5-part series about the team's journey through all things Rebel, through getting the Eclipse Defender 130 and getting that ready to go out and rebel, and then ultimately doing as fabulously as they did, placing 8th overall this past year. Absolutely amazing. And all of the great stories that go with it. I think it's a pretty fabulous series and some great insight from both Jenna and Liza, some behind the scenes stories. A lot of information about sort of what went on the rally that we didn't necessarily get to see. We got to hear about on the podcast afterwards, but we didn't really get to actually see what happened until this point. And there was in-car footage, there was on-track footage, all kinds of cool stuff that this documentary gives you access to. So that's all up there.
There's a lot of things that this touches on, and it's pretty cool to see the process start to finish, and especially on International Women's Day, it's cool to check out. So definitely take some time to go over there and check out some of Steven's handiwork. Really produced a nice video for JLR, and it's cool to see.
Yeah, we're really proud of it. It's great work. Abigail did all of the editorial work, and finishing is absolutely fantastic. Real team effort, and of course Jenna and Liza. And they're not just amazing team driving and adventuring and racing skills, but also, they're just really great at telling you the story of how, they put this whole thing together and how they endured through this whole thing.
I just like to point out that I held a lighting screen in one of the scenes. So
that's right.
I probably deserve no credit, but I could say I was there.
I drove the van a lot of the time. So
I did. I did drive the van. There is that. I drove the van, and everyone lived, which is not always the case when I'm driving the van.
It was like 110 degrees out there, so it was not easy.
Speaking of International Women's Day, I got an interesting photograph sent to me about some ladies that traveled in their Land Rover. It looks like there's a bunch. Like there's I want to say 2, 4, 5 older ladies.
Yes.
Who traveled from London to Australia in 1968.
Right.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. They all have exactly the names that you would expect.
Right.
Mavis.
Oh, yeah.
Helen.
Yeah.
Phyllis.
Yes.
Anne and Melanie.
Yeah.
Rode in a 109 3-door from London to Australia. And I don't have a lot of information about their journey, but this is incredible. This is a really neat trip and a very intriguing photograph. I'm definitely intending to do a deep dive on these ladies who did this expedition so long ago. And they drove in what looks to be a 109 3-door with van sides. So you can just imagine 3 of these ladies in the front seat and the other 2 bouncing around the back with no windows.
Like a jackass stunt back there, just sort of bouncing off the sides. Yeah, it's interesting. It looks like it was probably a 2A at that time. And man, that would have been a fun ride. I mean, you think about the the first Overland or something in the back of those, the station wagon Series 1s, and that was 4 guys packed in there. But this is a completely different kind of thing. That is a really far way. So what do? You drive. How do you get to Australia? Obviously, a boat's involved at some point, right?
Yeah, I think, I don't remember when the channel was completed. Do you know? But they probably took a plane or a boat from London to Europe, from England to France, across the channel there. And then they drove across Europe and then through the Middle East and then down through Southern Asia and then down to Malaysia, all the way down to the tip there as far as you could drive, and then put it on a boat, and then to Australia, and then across Australia. So I think that they drove 85-90% of the way. there for sure.
Wow. That is really incredible. That's
pretty neat trip that I definitely want to learn more about. The Granny's Expedition to Australia is headline that I saw, but I'm certainly excited to learn more about that. And no better time than on International Women's Day. So
that's right. Well, that's another thing. The first overlanders, they were like, university students. I mean, that's a much different thing than these are obviously not university students. These are some older ladies, and it's a little bit different journey to take in your older age. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about some of the Land Rover women's expeditions from the late 50s and early 60s, but this particular expedition is one that I had not previously heard of or been aware of. And the picture of these ladies, they look like they're having a lot of fun.
They do.
They look like they're back from a day of shopping and they're just ready to get in their Land Rover and just drive across the whole world.
It's across the entire world. Yeah.
I love it because it's such a stark contrast to a lot of the overlanding stuff that you see today. And it's like all these hyper prepared vehicles with, outdoor showers and bathrooms and folding awnings and max tracks and tires and air lockers and central tire inflation and just all the expedition gear that you can. And these ladies got like spare gas cans. That's like all they have.
Some spare gas cans and what looks like a bag of like maybe cake or something. I don't know. Like it's
probably a cake. It's probably a cake.
I think, yeah. And then they're just ready to go. They're like, okay, well, we're going to head to Australia. So we'll see you guys in like 8 months or something,
It's really cool. It's really cool. And, no better testament than that to the stock capabilities of a series Land Rover. Just take off after shopping and drive across the world.
And head across the world. Speaking of the stock capabilities of a Land Rover, finally, there is yet another video up on the Land Rover Defender website, and that is a piece that JLR put together about the Barber Toy in general, but also the Barber Toy run that happens in one of the clubs. Jenna and Liza are also a part of that particular video, and you can check that out on JLR's site as well. Again, that's Women of Defender. If you want to look at that on the Land Rover USA.com/Defender website. It's under the Women of Defender category. You can hop in there and check that out. Again, we'll have that link in the notes. But yeah, it's a really cool video as well. It talks about Barber Toy and her myriad of vehicles. Of course, Pollyanna probably being the most famous. Her Series 1 Land Rover, the one she liked the most. And
who can blame her? It's pretty awesome.
It is the absolute coolest. And our good friend Tom Pickford has that car still. We've been lucky enough to ride around in that and see that car many times. And it's a real treat. It's super cool. Tom and his dad did an incredible job of sympathetically restoring that car back, just about ready to go out on its first adventure. But it still has all of its interesting little bits and all of the hand-painted, sort of sign writing on the side of it that she had done before she left on her expeditions, and all of the
still needs the wooden hardtop.
Does need a wooden hardtop. Yeah, it has a soft top on it right now, but yeah, it's a really neat car because there's all kinds of weird little things and stuff that had to be fixed, like while she was out adventuring, and that was fixed in all kinds of different countries and things. And Tom's retained a lot of that weird little stuff on it, and it's a neat car. It's a super neat car. Tom's a neat guy. He's an eclectic individual, to say the very least. So he's done a great job, and his dad's pretty
birds of a feather.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're kindred spirits, and apparently they got to know each other really well towards the end of Barbara Toy's life. They were very close, and the Pickfords and Barbara Toy. So no better place for it to be. And he is, of course, an incredible steward of that car. He takes incredibly good care of it, and it's out at shows and stuff all the time. So he's always sharing it with the greater Land Rover community. So if you're over in the UK and you find yourself at a show, there's a good chance that Tom may be there with Pollyanna, and you can check it out. It's pretty neat. And and there's of course new Barbara Toy books being published. There's the In Search of Sheba that is out just now. That has been thanks to some of our friends here.
Well, speaking of going out and to get stuff, check out our web store over at the Underpowered Hour. We got plenty of good stuff, from decals to shirts, a lot of neat stuff, and we'll be restocking that pretty soon. I think
we got some new items in the works as we speak. We've got finally some Eclipse rally car merchandise coming your way. So you'll be able to, if you're a fan of this year's Rebel Rally car, the Eclipse, we're going to have some stuff going up there around that, stickers and things like that. So you can get a hold of that. Of course, we have last year's The Dream Machine as well. And yeah, all kinds of every tiny Ike you can imagine. We've gotten lots of, I think we posted the Texas edition Tiny Ike on Instagram or something. We have had some requests for Cowboy Tiny Ike, which is simply Tiny Ike with a cowboy hat. So we're going to see. We're going to see about making some custom. Abigail just put a cowboy hat on the Tiny Ike sticker, but we're going to see. We may do some custom Tiny Ikes for,
Well, I won't buy one without a lasso being in there too.
All right, we'll see what we could do. We'll get the team on that, the art department on some custom Tiny Ike. So if you have an idea for a custom Tiny Ike sticker, go ahead, DM us on the old Instagram, and we'll get to work on that straight away. But in the interim, if you haven't headed over to our YouTube channel, do that, like and subscribe. There is now the 80-inch steering box replacement video is up on there, so you can go and see
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, 75-year-old car get a brand new 75-year-old steering box put in it. So that's always fun.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And to get the
that was a Saga. That was a Saga to get that steering box.
Was a Saga, but yeah, if
an international Saga,
intrigue and murder and subterfuge and all that.
It was crazy.
If you've never seen the steering box in an 80-inch replaced, it's quite the thing to see how the horn works, and how many seals and things it takes to get all that shit working.
Silly.
Yeah, it's silly, and great collaboration with our good friends at the CKD shop and all their reproduction little seals and felt gaskets and everything to go in there to make sure that thing leaks less steering fluid than it would without those things. And she steers like a dream now.
Just leaking horn fluid now.
Yeah, it's just the horn fluid leaks. Every time you hit the horn, you get sprayed with a little 90 weight, but that's normal. That's totally normal. So, well, with that, head on over there. Please do subscribe if you haven't. And also liking for whatever reason, that really helps us. The YouTube really
even if you don't just like.
Yeah, just like. Even especially if you don't actually like, And thanks to our good friend.
There's no better way to tell us all that you don't like us than by liking us.
And thanks to our good friend Joe over there at the Lost Cause Ranch, who threw a little clip of one of our last videos into his video. So we appreciate the shout out. Joe's a good buddy, and we have to get a collaboration going with Joe and the Lost Cause Ranch. I'm not sure what it's going to be. Perhaps Ike and I will fly out there and fully restore his Nada wagon in a weekend. How hard can it be?
Seems feasible.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I do have a spare engine for it. So, we'll just carry that on the plane. No problem. We're almost there. And then that's basically it. That's all, we'll just slap that thing in there and we're good to go. It's going to be fine.
Well, sir, it's been great. I will always see you on the trail.
Absolutely. Cheers for now.
Take care.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.